Okay, we are recording now. And I realized this morning that I did not upload the video from Tuesday, so I'll download the two of them today. So on Tuesday, I went over the selecting the hues for this section that I painted between yellow and blue. And yellow, yellow, green, 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 blue. The scale of this, a circle, so this is a circular diagram, and what you want, a circle cut, like the diameter of a circle across the, widest point. 6 inches is good. It's like for this size of a sample, I think a 6-inch circle would be better than a larger circle, because otherwise it'll be just a lot of space in between them, and it'll be a little easier for comparison if they're closer together. So the way I had this, for those of you who were not here Tuesday, I took all of these, laid them out. 2, 3. Got them in the right order. So the best way to be able to tell what you have is to cut them off of your painted sheet and cut at least one side to the paint. As you can see, if you try comparing, if I try comparing these two, it's hard to see because of this bit of white right there. You need to be able to put the painted surfaces right next to each other, and just with those guys, you can see that this one is a little darker. And when you're painting from yellow and adding blue, darker means it's getting more blue. And what I ended up with for the blue-green, what I arrived at for blue-green, and what I've chosen for blue-green is this. And you can see the difference here and here. The more you do this and compare colors, the better you get at seeing it. And that I mentioned is the term visual acuity. And that is really how, visual acuity is how well you see. And you can improve it by practice. It's, it's part of memory. You fine-tune the way, the sense, just like your, it's really fine-tuning your understanding of the subtle differences between hues. The slight difference here might be a little harder to see, but if I put that down next to this one, or maybe if I put that on top, I want to get them so that they fit better. You can see much more clearly the difference between this one that is a little darker. This is what I chose for green. And compared to the blue-green, you can see there's a clear difference. What you want is a clear difference in hue, meaning the color, and what happens when you add blue to yellow is you also darken it, and so you change the value, which is the lightness or darkness of something. And you can, sometimes the darkening of it can be a little deceptive, where it looks like it's getting darker and it's changing, but it can be hard to determine if it's an even step of change in hue or in good color. So laying them all out allows you to compare everything that you painted, and I think that you should do it that way. Once I laid this section out between yellow and blue, I numbered the back of all of them, so in case they get scattered, I can find them a lot more easily. It's good. I mean, it certainly would be good practice if every time you need to like check them, you put them down and compare like what is the change of color. But you know, some of them you'll get very similar. These two are very, very similar to each other. If I were trying to make a transition of just these that's even, I would probably take one of those. I would definitely take that out. And then I think, like, this is a better transition where you have this, like, you're trying to get even steps of change in terms of hue and also value, but sometimes the change in value, like when if you've already painted the range between blue and violet, you've noticed that the value doesn't change nearly as much between blue and red to get that range of violet as it does between yellow and blue. Yellow is very light, blue is much darker in terms of value, and between blue and red, the difference in value is not nearly as great as it is between yellow and blue. So these are things that you just learn. You'll learn to see them better as you work. And if you're doing fine arts, graphic design, interior design, the ability to discern subtleties in colors is pretty important. So let's put this here. Oops. Right. All right, so I made this template from a scrap, just like from like a redundant sample. Go right there. And so what I'm doing, when I've got these I traced this on the back by taping it down here and then cutting it, or tracing that shape, and then I'm going to grab my okay. Try a tiny straight edge here. So I'm going to cut out these other two.
Duffy, did you draw on the back of that first so that you know where you're cutting? I wonder if I missed that step.
Yes, I did.
Okay, thanks.
So the way so you can see the shape of the template right there. Can you see that? Maybe if you're looking at well, it depends on the screen you're looking at, but that's there. So what I did is I put a G here. Also, when I traced that shape, I left myself. I knew that I looked and saw there was like a white edge there, so I stayed a little bit off that edge. If I somehow goof that one up, I'm going to save the rest of this because I could get another one out of that if I had to. So that's like can be
Okay, and it's that one triangle that you're using. Is that T for template or T for triangle? That's your
T.
template?
Yes, this is T for template.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. So yeah, so I made the yeah, I made a I just like from like a kind of a washy, like a thinly painted sample that was redundant. So I just cut this triangle out, and then I used the same one to trace every one of them. That way you don't have to keep redrawing. So the way that's done. Put that down. Take that down. Trace. Oops. Trace. Trace. Yeah, I'm gonna get enough of the line on the side that I can cut that. Like I can line that up to cut it. And so that one blue green. That's my blue green. I'm going to remember to also label the back and save that. I've got my leftover yellow, green, and yellow. That one I don't need. Let's cut off, that's too small. And here. So using that one template will make them. It helps me to keep these the same size. It also is much more efficient to carefully measure one for the template, cut it out, and then just use that template to trace all of them. Okay, this is my green. I cut them with the space down. So that I don't, like if I'm putting the straight edge on top of the paint, this paint is, it's vulnerable to being scuffed up, stained. I try to make sure you clean your hands before you handle them, and try not to touch the surface. So sometimes sometimes I do, but usually I'll try to, like, if it's on a surface like this, I'll push it to the edge and then pick it up by the side. That way my greasy fingers don't leave any kind of spots or anything like that. All right, here's the okay. So this is a 6x6 square. If you have a compass and you want to trace a circle, then open the compass 3 inches and then trace it around there. I'm going to want you to put this on the presentation board, like a 10 by 15 presentation board. There, like that. Good. So I would lay them out. So what I did here, I measured 3 inches to the center of the top and the sides also. So 3 inches, so I can find the middle. Violet is going to go here because violet is opposite yellow on the color wheel. And some of these in here, I would probably do it visually. If you know, like yellow, you could mount it like right there. And when mounting this, drafting dots, are you there? This table is cluttered really fast. Excuse me. If I'm doing this, there, gently dot that down, lift. I would maybe like hold that there, lift it. If you're using the rubber cement, I would just maybe put a little bit on here, or maybe like put like a thin layer down there, and then carefully lay that back down. That press it, maybe like a bottle of this paint. Once you press it, if you put the rubber cement under weight, it'll help it. It'll help it to stick well while it's drying. So if you don't, then if it's a little springy like this because the paper's curled a little bit, then it's possibly just going to want to pop back up on you. Anything like, yeah, don't put your coffee cup down on it. That's, who knows what's, there could be something on the bottom of your coffee cup. So anything, this is not heavy enough. With this, my milk steamer pencil cup, like that. Maybe you could put a little piece of paper down, just like grab a scrap. There. So here, do adhesive, do down that, there, leave it. I might do like the yellow, then the violet. Yeah, and then maybe get up and go do something for 5 minutes and then come back and give them a chance, give the glue a chance to set up. Okay.
Debbie,
Yes.
sorry, I've got another question.
That's okay.
What you're putting it on right now would be the 6-inch square or diameter circle.
Yeah.
On media paper or Bristol paper, and then that whole thing you're not showing us mounting right onto the presentation board. You're doing the paper that's then going to be on to the presentation board, correct?
I'm going to say you can do it one of two ways. You can mount them straight onto the presentation board, or you could put it onto a piece of media paper first, and then mount that whole thing to the presentation board.
Okay.
Be a little more forgiving if you try to put it on the presentation board first.
That seems kind of scary to me. If you mess up or something,
yeah,
then you messed up a big piece. And then Duffy, if you do it on media or Bristol paper first, is it possible that I'm remembering some of them went on to black, or am I correct that you want them all to be white?
I would put them on white paper because
Okay.
You could. I've seen color wheels. This I've seen color wheels where students will take, and they, on occasion in classes that I've taught, the student will ask, "Can I mount them? Can I mount it to a blackboard?" And I'll say, "Sure." And it looks cool. It does change. Um, it kind of makes everything look a little bit brighter because of the contrast with the blackboard. But you don't have to. That's not a requirement.
Okay, because maybe it's kind of stuck in my head
It
from
sounds like somebody else's
look.
class.
No, no, I'm thinking when you pulled up all the examples, remember, of those like junior high ones and all the different ones.
Yep.
I think that's where I'm remembering seeing some in black.
Yes.
I would prefer to do it in white, so that's perfect for me.
Elliot. Hey. Oh, hi, little baby. Come here. What are you doing? Come here. You want to come back here? Come back here. He wants to sit behind me on the chair. There we go. Another cameo appearance by Elliot. So yeah, so this, and you can make this a square on the media paper. I'm doing this on the sketchbook paper as a demonstration, but don't use the sketchbook paper. It's too thin. When you glue it, when you stick the stuff down, it'll get really distorted. The paper will just get wavy and buckled, and it won't work well. Okay, so, and then here, I took this triangle, curved the long edge a little bit, and then I cut this. This is like as a demo sample. I tried cutting some curves, and if you want to, you can do that. Cutting this. No, you can't. You cannot have my chair. Hey, he wants to play or something. If I have that cut in a triangle first, just approximate a triangle here, maybe even make it a little bit larger there. So you can see these that I cut are they're a little small, but they're okay. I mean, you can still see them. When I cut the curves on there, if you use the scissors, slowly close the scissors and then turn the paper to get that. And practice on a scrap. I'm going to curve this there, and I just cut off a little extra. So I went over that way. Yeah. Watch your fingers. There. Okay. If you and if you use a cutting mat to do that, let me grab my little one here that can fit on camera. So if I had this here, So the reason for drafting dots or drafting tape is that the adhesive is a low tack adhesive, which means it's not as sticky as other tapes. Um, that way you can take the tape off and it'll still, you can still stick it down um, again. But don't just rip the tape off, because if you're careful and you pull the tape off gently, then you won't damage the surface of the painted sample. But if you rip it off too quick, you can pull up the paint. So it's not like it's well, it's not indestructible. Okay, so cutting this, I'm just gonna like hold this really firmly and just pull my arm down and like move this side to side. Find the spot, and hopefully I can put this right back. No, not quite. Yeah. Normally when I'm cutting, I want to just like let it happen in like maybe like 2 or 3 cuts. But if I'm cutting through this, I really want to try to get through in one, because it's pretty difficult to put that back in the same, like, in that same cut. Resist the temptation to tear it. Good. There. And then, okay, if I miss my line a little bit, that's okay. There. So you can do it with scissors, you can do it with knife, but always like if you're cutting with the shape with a knife, tape it down so it doesn't slide around on you. Makes your life a lot easier. And especially like when you've got these pieces, when you select the right ones, you want to be careful and not goof them up, because then you're either trying to find a substitute with from all the others that you painted, or you might find that you got to, I've seen it happen where like a design gets gradually smaller while you make a mistake on one, then you try to cut the rest to match the mistake. That usually is a downward spiral. So as with everything you're doing, you want to be careful. There's no guarantee you're not going to make a mistake, and if you do make a mistake that cannot be corrected, then take a deep breath and get your paint out and paint some more samples, if all else fails. I don't like having to go back and do something a second time, but sometimes I have no choice. And you just sometimes you just have to do something. You got to do it again. Okay, that one. Okay, no, the yellow can stay there. All right, any questions about what I'm doing or your work? If you have questions about something you want me to address for you specifically. Okay.
Duffy, I'm wondering if you have heard students say before, or any of my classmates feel like sharing, if they had trouble with having some lines on the samples. I was using the brushes that were given in the art kit,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know if, I mean, I've watched your demonstrations and stuff. I don't know if for a while the paint was drying really fast or what, but with some of them, is even when I played around with it, I felt like I kept having a lot of lines
Okay.
showing.
Okay. That sounds like the paint's a little too thin, or you're not using enough of it.
Okay, yeah, I tried to do it both ways, and for a while it just felt like too thick, and then sometimes when it was so thin, it wasn't covering as much,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So, okay, thanks.
Well, you don't. Yeah. I mean, you. Was it? Is it happening in all the colors, or lighter colors, or darker colors?
It seemed to be in the lighter colors, like the yellow greens and stuff like that.
Well, that makes sense. I want just do your best with them because it's the lighter colors, like the color, like the colors that you make from yellow, especially when you're close to yellow.
Yep.
Those are the hardest to make opaque.
Okay. And then when the funny thing was, yeah, I was getting more confident when they were getting darker because I didn't know if I was getting better or it was just because the colors were darker. So that was a good feeling. But the strange thing was the straight yellow itself, I didn't really have trouble with.
Hmm.
It was with the the light ones, like the yellow, orange,
Hmm.
and the yellow green.
Did you? Is it possible that you didn't mix the paint well enough?
Maybe, but I tried it a bunch of times.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Yes, because that sounds like that. I mean, that potentially could be a reason for that. If you see streaks, but if it's really just because they're thin, then it wouldn't be that you didn't mix it well enough. Not yet. Oh. Hey, move your cute little self. Don't drink that. No, that's my water. Oh. Oh, hey. Okay. A little bit of blue here. So I need a blue. That. Yeah, boy, there's something. One of the least appealing features of this paint is the way it dries in the threads of the bottle. You kind of have to like open it over a trash can or something. But small price to pay for paint that does not come in small tubes and cost like $8 to $10 a tube or more than that. So there. So I'm dipping that in the water. I know my blue is pretty dense. This bottle is just kind of dried out. We're starting to evaporate a little bit. Blue, 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 blue. So I don't have a blue yet. Oh, there's not too much water in that. There we go. Across and then across this way. Yeah. So there's a nice clean sample of blue. All right. Wish I'd had room to leave a track little border around the sides, but I wanted to get a row of 3. Okay. Good. Red. You. There. So hold that. Yep. And I think I might have mentioned this last week. If you have new bottles of paint, probably won't need to stir it, but stirring it does not hurt. Okay, there, trashing that. And then with red, have any of you painted the range of violet and found just how difficult it can be to tell when they're wet which color is which?
Yes, I thought that was hard. For a while, I felt like I kept adding color and it wasn't changing it.
Yeah, and then when it dried, you saw that it was. Or did you?
I did. I don't know. I felt the whole thing was kind of challenging.
Yeah. Well, it is. It is. That's. I guess this wouldn't be. This wouldn't be worth as much if it weren't challenging. Okay. So with my red, so I've got blue. Um, when you're painting with the red and the blue, you can add more color at once. Like the blue is a little darker than the red. So I'm just going to take what's on the brush here. And let's see. That was way more blue than I should have put in there. Look how dark that is making it. Yikes. Oh well. I'll maybe like separate some red. Well, this might be like an error. Mix it thoroughly, scrape this off. Pick it up and keep mixing it. So something that you'll see if you look at a color wheel, like from an online source, or something that's printed, they tend to lighten up the range of violets. So the blue violet, the violet, and the red violet look much brighter than what you're going to get with this paint. They artificially lighten that so that you can see them better. But true violet is darker. And this is also like the paint that you're using is not the same colorant. It's not the same material. It also doesn't use the same colorant as the ink or the color calibration of a monitor. So let's see what I got there. Yeah, that is dark. Right. So that will be hard. It's a little hard to tell until I. A little hard to tell until I get. Doity. Oh. All right. So what do I do here? I think I'd like to have more red. If I just start trying to put red into this one to lighten it, I'm going to use up a lot of my red. So I probably should get a third cup and just put some red into it and back off and not use so much paint the first time. I have another smaller brush here. I can use this to pick up my color. With this amount of blue, I might try this here, where I just take the red. And I could just use this and start putting it in that. Oh, you be careful. There's wet paint over here. Hey, no. Don't come up here. Elliot. Little bug. You gotta go over there. Go over there. Hey. No, go over there. Sweetheart. Don't do it. No, don't do it. You're gonna put your foot in paint. Oh my God, they're so cute. Whoa. Yeah, don't do that. All right, you go down here. Sorry, folks. Little baby distracting me. Okay. Did I ever tell you how I met him, Elliot?
I don't think you did.
No? Oh, well. I used to volunteer regularly at a shelter for cats in Chicago called Treehouse. And one of the things I did, okay, so I'm taking just like a little bit of residue of this mixture and putting it in here. So Elliot, when they take cats in, um, the first place is they put them into isolation wards by, I guess those will classify them as like, new cats. And if they find the cats are sick with like, a lot of them have upper respiratory infections. Some of them have ringworm, which is very contagious. Um, some of them are, some of them have injuries. And this is a type of shelter that does, or at least they did, like if a cat had an injury that might get the cat euthanized in a different shelter, this place would take them in, and if the cat could survive and have a good life, that's what they put their resources into. So I used to volunteer in the isolation wards because those cats needed contact with humans. They needed some socialization, and the upper respiratory infection ward is where I met Elliot. He was this teeny little kitty with an injured paw, sneezing and miserable. And we were not supposed to let the cats out of the cages. And I almost always obeyed that rule, except for Elliot, where I would he was in a bottom cage, and I would bring several like blankets and towels in with me and put them down on the floor and then sit on them and then have a blanket and towel in my lap and then open the cage, and Elliot would crawl out and he would cuddle up in my lap and fall asleep. So he was just such a sweetie pie. And they discovered when he was getting better from his upper respiratory infection, they discovered that he had ringworm, and so they put him into the ringworm ward. And somehow I didn't get ringworm, and but ringworm takes a really long time to get rid of, and so he was in there for like I think 2 or 3 months, and they wouldn't let volunteers go into that ward because it's very contagious. It's like vet staff only. So it was about like maybe 4 months later. I went to the shelter to volunteer, and I was thinking about adopting another cat since I had lost a kitty several months before. And I went into one of the rooms, and there was Elliot in an acclimation cage getting ready to be let out into the room, and I just thought, he is mine. So I went to the adoptions people and I said, I want to adopt this cat. And that was in 2009. Now he is technically an old man, according to the vets, but he still is a lot like a little baby. Okay, so I've got this. This is better. So I was a little too quick putting the blue into the red. So since I have just red and blue in here, I'm going to start just transferring a little bit into here, and I'm starting to get this change from blue and getting into the range of blue-violet. Just a second, I got to get some water. Okay. So you can see the blue is very dark. As it dries, so with the blue, I can add more. Dennis, you gotta wait, baby. Hold up. So the blue is very dark. You can see I've got to add a lot. Elliot. Yes, that is an old cat right there. Hey. He was only a year. He was around a little over a year old when I brought him home, which was a little surprising. I think maybe like a year and a half. He was living in an alley in Pilsen. Somebody had him when he was a kitten and really loved him, but he got dumped outside, and the woman who caught him, she using a humane trap, she got him and brought him into got him into the shelter. But she told me that he used to spend most of his time, like he lived under a dumpster, and he used to kill rats that were bigger than he was. But he's started out as a little street urchin. Okay, so there you can see it's not changing a ton yet. So I need it I think adding the red to the blue. You can be a little more generous. Now this is far away from the actual blue. You see, I'm getting a little bit of a. Yeah, I've got enough daylight in here. I can turn my overhead light off. Daylight is the standard for light. If you can use just daylight, that's ideal. And I'm getting a lot of ambient daylight in here, so here, I'll put that a little bit there. Good, and there you can see the difference better there. And this like new fad for LED light. Be careful with LED like those. I've had to deal with a outdoor lighting problem at my building where they put in these hideous LED like floodlights as if they were lighting a parking lot, and it took months to get it corrected. But the Kelvin, there's like a Kelvin value or a Kelvin rating for light energy, and Kelvin is the temperature. So the higher the Kelvin number, the cooler the temperature of the light. A warm incandescent light bulb is about 2700 Kelvin, where you'll see it on a box of LED light bulbs, 2700 K. 3000 K is also, kind of like a nice, comfortable, warm light. 5000 K are like the blue. I mean, it really looks like fluorescent lighting to me, which is, I don't get the desire for that. It's too stimulating to the eye. Human vision, in the spectrum of visible light, human vision prefers like green and yellow are more like in the the middle of our range of what we see of light energy. So keep that in mind. People who just I've had this happen where you have to tell an electrician which Kelvin rating you want. Otherwise, they just tend to go for 5000 K because somebody's pushing that stuff. ComEd is actually, they're the ones pushing it. So
But why are they pushing it? Is it because it's greener and it's more efficient, or do they think that people just want to feel like, let's say they're in their kitchen, almost like they're in an operating room and they have as much light as they can?
yes, it's well, part of the reason they want people. I mean, one there's a good reason to switch things to LED is that they use less energy. They also say that they don't generate heat, but that's not the case. They generate an alarming amount of heat, but LED light bulbs have a heat shield at the base. And the element, the like light emitting diode, actually produces a lot of heat. But because they put a heat shield on it, it dissipates it. But ComEd wants to get everything transferred to LED because it uses less energy. They're even paying like a portion of cost to get people to switch like exterior lighting to LED, which is leading to a lot of really hideous outdoor lighting because the LED, the diodes are extremely bright, and they usually just like they don't really have any kind of like a cover. They're so bright that a cover over it that's kind of opaque or like that scatters the light. The diode, the light goes right through it, and it's doesn't really like mitigate or scatter the light very well. Um, so, but they don't in terms of like the Kelvin. They they say that it's like that it's like for more active like stimulating light, but you really don't. It's like it's overstimulating is what it does in my experience. Maybe that's just me. Um, but if you read the box will tell you like that you should put it, different temperatures of lighting in different rooms, and I don't know. I mean, I don't usually just do what a box tells me to do. Um, so, but it's important. I think it's an important distinction in terms of lighting because I know, especially for you interior design students, um, that makes a big difference in terms of the quality of interior lighting, and you should know what those different things do. I find that I remember old like fluorescent lighting that was invented in like the 40s and 50s. Um, in schools, like fluorescent lighting was always just like this, like the like cheapest and lowest quality lighting that you could get. It was always like in our schools and all that. And that's exactly like that 5000 K temperature. That's my yeah. Well, I mean, you should at least be aware of it. If excuse me, if you prefer the 5000 K for yourself, great, load up on it. But I find that they just really look too, like it's similar to something like if you have like a color scheme, an interior that uses too much saturated color, or a painting or graphic design that just uses a lot of saturated color. It's very stimulating to the eye, and if it's overstimulating to the eye, you kind of have to look away. So you really don't want to do that. So this, lighting engineers or electrical engineers are not the best people to decide what the temperature of lighting should be for an interior. Just as our property manager and the commercial lighting contractor were not the best people to decide what our exterior lighting should be. I had to take control of it, have them remove all of it, hire a different contractor, and I directed them to do a very specific lighting job, and it looks way better. And I had to explain to the old contractor and our property manager, who does a lot of good work for us, but I had to tell them, you don't live here, and you lit our building as if it were a parking lot. So that's sometimes, if you're in design, you work with other people, and you got to just tell them this is wrong. But ComEd really pushed this, has been pushing this conversion to LED, and they've been paying for it. They'll pay like half the cost of a commercial lighting job.
I think some of it is liability driven also. In other words,
Probably.
I live near a school and they have some hideous lighting. And I think that they want to cover themselves so that there's not an accident or something. So then
Oh, yeah.
it's lit up like, it seems so unnecessary to me and so jarring when it's a dark night. Um, and but I think that, maybe that could be part of it too on the sales pitch from the lighting consultants. Like, oh, you wouldn't have to pay for an accident, because when a custodian is leaving the building late or something like that, because it's so brightly lit up,
Yeah.
but then you feel as though, you know, your building that you're talking about or somewhere else might look like a shopping center.
Yes, that's a very good point. Um, Fear of litigation, or being able to cover themselves and say, "Well, we lit this really well, so we didn't leave any dark places for someone to hide." Um, yeah, that's definitely a consideration. Is they're trying to protect themselves, and I think part of it is you know, municipalities like cities and towns, that could very well be a motivating factor. Um, and yeah, one of the problems I've run into is that they pump a lot of energy. It's like a lot. It's very bright, but there's so much glare that it reduces visibility. Like it's like if you're walking toward one of these floodlights, you can't see anything because it's shining right in your eyes. So yeah. But like my irritation with sloppy lighting jobs aside, you should know, even if sometimes you might want that cooler temperature to the light, and you might want to have 5000K LED, but be aware that I guess that just be aware of what those numbers mean, because the 2700 is matches incandescent pretty well. Okay. All right, so you can see how slow this is going. I should have started with less blue. Probably should have just started with less paint, because if I start with less paint, if I overdo it, like as I overdid this, putting blue into the red, I put way too much in there. It's a lot easier for me to shift, and just like I could have, if I had a small amount of paint, I could have just added more red. With the amount of paint that I had in there, I would have had to add a lot of red to get it to where I wanted it to be. So you can see now that these are drying on this side. there's the blue. This is what I had for, it was like, this is just like that first sample. That's too far away. Gradually painting these, I'm getting like into the range of blue violet in here. But you really have to let them dry, paint all of them. When I get to this point, I think I would probably want to come back, like put some red into a cup and start adding blue, and then just try to get it to where it comes back to this. Because it's a little there. Comes back to this one. Because really, the if you've never painted a color wheel before and you don't know, the best way to know is like this painting these gives me my colors, and then I look at them and I evaluate which one might be blue violet. I might have blue. I think I probably do have blue violet in here, like maybe this one, but I really can't tell. I can't tell how close or far away this is compared to violet until I do the whole range between red. If I have like samples between blue and red, then I'll know. But you can see the hue, like this big difference is definitely on the red side. This might be like something like a red violet, but I don't know for sure. You've got to paint a bunch of samples so that you will know. Okay, there. That's enough of that. So let me summarize what you have for this here. There. Just take first. Take a little scrap of this paper here, my yellow there, and my rubber cement here. So when sticking these down, we got this in position. That I can put a little bit down there. I don't want it to be too heavy, because if it's too much rubber cement down on that surface and I press this down, it's going to squeeze around the sides. So I want to get most of it off of there. Good. Careful. And I had I'm just going to use an old sample that I'm not using. You can see that starting to curl, wants to curl up. Coming up there. I'll put that down. Put something on it. It might need to be a little heavier than this. A book, if you got books. This magnifying paperweight there. That I should just leave alone. So be patient when you're mounting these. If you try to hurry with the rubber cement, you might be sad later or sooner, because if you move it too quickly, you're going to find that it's not going to stay put. Okay. And if you use a glue stick, just again, be careful. I would, with the glue stick, I would put it on the back of the painted sample so that you're not getting it on the surface of the board or the media paper. Okay. Color wheel. So you've got with your color wheel, 12 hues: yellow, red, blue, green, orange, violet, and then the tertiaries in here, tertiary hues. You want them to be as even as possible, and it can be difficult to see, but I want you to do your best to make your best judgment about which are the correct hues that go between yellow and red, between red and blue, between blue and yellow. You've got the primaries, and so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You're mixing. You're trying to evaluate, like, choose 9 hues to fill in between the primaries, and that's at some point you're the one who has to decide which color, like which is the correct color, like what is violet, what is green, what's yellow, orange. So, and that's I think I've mentioned this before. At some point, it comes down to your judgment when you're designing anything, when you're making, art, graphic design, interior design. At some point, it's up to you, and experience teaches you which is likely the better choice. And if you don't have experience, then you have to get experience, and this is how you get experience, by doing these projects. And if you don't do well on one or more of the assignments, that is I guess it's an expected learning process that you won't always do. Your work won't always be completely successful. And the best thing is to just learn, take what you can get from it, learn it, and then move on to the next project. I remember as an undergraduate, it was right after I had changed my major to history, and I dropped out of college and went back, and I was doing really well, getting A's and everything. I was having fun. Any class that I took, I just wanted to learn. And I settled upon history. I really loved this Russian history class I took. And so I changed my major to history, and I had to take a survey course in U.S. history. And the first test, I got a C on, and the professor was demanding, and he was encouraging and pleasant, but he had high standards for the work that we did, and I studied. I thought I knew it, and I took the exam, got it back, C, and I just thought, I'm a history major. How can I get a C on an exam? And so I went and talked to him, and he just said, "You're new and you're out of shape. So you just keep, read, take notes from your reading, review your notes, take notes in class, ask questions." And eventually, by the end of the semester, I got an A in that class because I worked harder in this survey course, I think, than in a lot of my other courses. But it just took time. And so it does take time. And once you go through classes where you sort of like get yourself in shape, get yourself up to speed, then you have the information. I remember the feeling of like after finishing a class, feeling like I want to go back and take the class again because now I know what I'm supposed to do. And you don't do that. You just take it and apply it to your next classes. So an understanding of color will serve you well in any of the majors that you've got, whether it's painting, painting and drawing, sculpture, ceramics, graphic design, interior design, any of that stuff. It's a pretty fundamental common element in all visual work. All right, so please complete the color wheel for Tuesday night. That's also when I want you to have the midterm vocab quiz done. I believe Claudia, there are some of these already. Great. Yes, excellent. Very good. Good stuff, Claudia. Are there any questions about the color wheel or the midterm quiz?
Sorry, it's me again. Yes, I do have a question about the color wheel.
Good.
Duffy, those little triangle curved demonstrations that you did.
Yeah.
If you were gluing them all down onto the media paper in the 6-inch square, do you advise getting the real, like maybe making a pencil mark or something for the exact center and then using that as a, maybe you measure a 1/2 inch off that for the point of the triangle? In other words, to get it all to line up properly.
Yes, that's a very good idea. Because the center, when you make, when you have this radial design, you have 12 samples of color coming out that will look like they're coming out from the center. If you measure, let's do this again. If you measure out from the center, here's my center. My yellow, I already mounted my yellow down. There's my yellow. That's nice and clean. Right, my yellow's there. If I just mount that one first, let's take a different sample here. There or like there. So if I take this one where I can put the yellow or the violet right up on the edge of the 6 inches, then measure from the center to the point. Then you can measure from center to point out the same distance. It's a very good point. Thank you, Marianne. I imagine that's probably going to be helpful to everybody.
But Duffy, if I'm not cutting you off, are you leaving it to the students' discretion if they want to have it, let's say, touching the point that's up near the border of the square you've done? Or perhaps, how would you feel if someone decided to make the point of the triangle that you did, which I would imagine might be like, 2 inches or shy of that, coming almost to touch in the middle, and then therefore it would leave all sorts of space above it Do you know what I'm saying?
Um, do you mean like,
I mean,
you mean like
I'm getting the
this point?
feeling you want it to expand out closest to touching the line of the perimeter, either of the circle or of the square, depending on where you are in the wheel.
Well, I wouldn't. So like, I wouldn't put this way out here.
Right. But you also don't want them all touching. Am I correct?
You can make them touch, but that is a lot more difficult to make them touch
Oh, okay.
because
Even if you draw a light pencil line from the actual point of the square.
you mean like that.
No, no, the point of the triangles all coming off the point in the very middle.
Um,
Yeah.
so you could, I mean, you could do that, but I would rather. I mean, if you do that, well, see, the thing is, if you do all touch in the middle, then they're going to be touching on the sides.
Oh, okay, because that's right, because there's 12 of them.
If
Okay.
that close, I mean, or at least that they could be. It would be. Oh, hey, there's paint right here. Elliot, all right. Oh, child, just don't. I think that. So here's the thing: is the closer they are on the edge, the less forgiving it is when you cut the edge here. So
Okay.
if they're a little farther apart,
Oh, I see what you're saying. It's almost easier. Okay, great.
it,
Fine with me. Thank you.
yeah. So that's a very good point. If they're all really close, then your edge has to be cut that much more precisely. Because even if they're not, if they don't touch, like depending, like you could have 12 of them, they could be really slender and not, and like, they wouldn't necessarily touch on the side. But the sides, if they're very close, if there's any variance in the cutting of the side, then it's going to show up much better if they're closer like this. So if they're a little farther out, it's you don't have to be as perfect.
Okay, and then you could make theoretically that triangle shape, something else, like a squiggle or something if you want, as long as it's consistent, correct?
Yes. So
Okay, thank you.
um, yes, I mean I've students have done a lot with these with the shape of each of the color samples in the past. You could make it kind of like a wavy, like a flame shape. It could be any shape that you could feasibly cut from this paper when it's painted. You can use, but I don't want anyone to sacrifice um, the quality of the painted samples for an interesting shape. So, like if you're trying to cut a really sharp curve, what could very well happen is that as you cut them, let's see here. Look, turn about off the scissors. And I can do that. And if they're approximately like that, so you can see like cutting this. There's a little variation. It's not completely clean, and in some places it looks like you can see the core of the paper. So when you mount it to the light surface, you can't see that. Um, so they could look like this. It could be a little bit larger, but the main thing I would like you to use a shape that you can control. So if you try for something that's more ambitious than you can control, then you might end up with something that's really like just becomes a little messy. And I want you to show me accurate colors. That's one of the primary goals, is accurate colors. Good presentation. So they kind of go hand in hand, but I would rather that you have clear color over jazzy presentation. Okay. All right. If there are no more questions, then we can end our session. But if you have questions, ask. Hello, Claudia. We're just wrapping up. Do you have any questions?
I am sorry. I tried to call in like around 8, and I tried again, and there was no meeting, so I figured out there's no meeting. So I'm sorry for being late.
No, I was a couple minutes late. I had some. I didn't clean up after my class last night well enough, and I had to put a bunch of stuff away, and so we were just a few minutes late starting.
So we're almost over.
Yes, but if you
I would
to
what?
I'll be happy to stick around and answer questions that you have.
Are we on the color wheel still?
We're finishing the color wheel. The color wheels. This is the last meeting about the color wheel.
Okay. Yeah. So I have the color wheel, and it should be 12 color samples on it, right?
Yep.
Okay. So I got that right.
Yes.
So I have no question, I think.
Okay. All right. Good. Well, Marion informed me that the folder for the color wheel is missing, and I honestly, like, when I didn't notice it when I transferred information, like all the course materials in Blackboard from last semester to this semester. I did not notice that somehow the folder for color wheel got dropped in the transfer. So I will correct that, and I'll have like the videos uploaded and information. I'll have it up there today. So, but the basics of the color wheel are pretty straightforward, and all that's sort of like conform with the demonstrations that I've given you. So, and Marion, thank you for all the questions. It actually helps me to remember to talk about things, because if something isn't clear, I always want to know about it. And you may be asking questions that other people have, but they feel they may be a little shy to ask the question. All right. Well, okay. Well, enjoy the sunshine today, and I hope that everyone has a beautiful weekend.
Thank you.